So let's create a project and a Firebase project and add it to our application. I'm on the console, Firebase console, and you can just click add project. Here I'm gonna give it a name. Sometimes this project ID, you give something else. You can customize it so you can get a better link, because this is gonna be the URL on your API keys. So it's nice to customize it sometimes if you get a bunch of numbers in here. The location, I live in Slovakia, so I'm just gonna put in there, and Europe here. Basically, you should put the Firestore location the closest to your customers. So it depends to which country you're gonna be building your app for. So this is what you need to change in here. So you need to click accept and create your project. Okay, now that was created. The first thing you need to do before you can start using, it's to create your database and create your bucket. So if you click on here on the tab, and you can just click here. We're gonna start in locked mode because we don't want anybody writing to our database without our consent. So just enable this. You just add those rules and instantiate your database, Firestore. So that was created. You can also add the real-time database if you go to it, but we're not going to use that. Here we also need to create our storage bucket. Basically, when you create a project, it's not done yet, so you can just come here and do this. If you don't do it, you're going to cause an error if you try to call it from your application. But that's about it. That's all you need to do. And now on the project overview, you can find your API keys here. You can just copy this object. Now let's go back to our application, and we're gonna set up Firebase, initialize Firebase with our keys. So here in the project, let's create a file called Firebase.ts. So let's install Firebase first. On the terminal, I'm just going to type npm install Firebase. Now back here on that file, let's just import Firebase from Firebase app. And we also need to import the modules you're going to use, Auth, Firestore, functions, and storage. Here we're going to export a constant called Firebase app, and that will hold the initialized project. And inside we need to add that keys. So I'm just going to copy it and paste inside there. Now for each of these components, we need to export it so we can import it somewhere else in our application, like in the components. So we're gonna export const auth as Firebase app, and you can do the same for the other modules. For the functions, we can choose the default location for our cloud functions. This is optional, but if you don't do it, it will default to US, somewhere in the US. So this Europe West one is the closest one to me. And if you go to the docs, here on the Get Started for Web, scroll down to functions, cloud functions location. And here's the one that we just used. Now if you scroll down, you can get a list of locations where you can add your function. So now our file is ready. Let's install the Firebase SDK in our computer, and we're gonna initialize our project here. On my terminal, I'm gonna use npm install -g for global Firebase tools. Okay, now that that's installed, the first thing you need to do is to log in with Firebase login. Now I've already logged in, so I'm just gonna go straight for the init command. This is gonna initialize Firebase. And the first question is to what kind of resources we're gonna use from Firebase. So let's go Firestore. You can use the arrow keys to move and the space to select. Host all this for. That's it. And here's asking which project you want to use. I only have that one in there, so that's it. The name for the Firestore rules, default is fine. Default's fine. I'm gonna use TypeScript for the cloud functions. Yes, why not? You go ahead, install it. So the public directory here is where Firebase can find our project. And for us, it's gonna be this folder over here. So we need to change that one, not the default. Our application is going to be a single page app. That means that we have this component in here that is going to control everything else. So we only have a single page. And from here, the JavaScript is going to kick in, and then that's it. There's no more HTML. So we can say yes in here. And this is, if you choose yes in here, it's gonna overwrite our own index. So just put no, because this is the Firebase placeholder. Here the default for store is fine. So now we have some new files. We have a functions folder. Let's go to our project to see better. Have our functions folder. This Firebase RC, the JSON. Here's the rewrite that it's going to rewrite to the index page, and what rule file to use it. Here for this Firebase .rules, I'm using this plugin Firebase. This is just to add the highlight, otherwise it will be like a normal file. So it's quite nice. And that's about it. The Firebase RC here, you can set up, if you have multiple projects, you can set up, you must have a default. But for example, the way I do, it's to have, for example, if I have a dev project and a prod, I'll have these two over here. So for example, this project we created, let's use it as a development project. And then you go to the Firebase here and create one for production. So if you go to the terminal, you can choose to which project you want to use. For example, if you are in develop mode, you can do Firebase use dev. And that will look into this file and see which project to use. For example, you can swap between your development and project. And this is good because then you can create a script over here to deploy to development, deploy to production. Something like this, deploy, and you do stencil build and Firebase use dev and Firebase deploy. So this would be a deploy script. Do this, and then you change the project that's using and deploy. Then you could do the same for prod. So prod here. Oh, obviously I don't have this project, so if I do Firebase use prod, it will be an error. So I'm just gonna delete this one. And I'll leave this one for reference. So that's about it. We have everything configured, initialized.